I think the question is, where do you feel at home? Where do you feel at home? I've been in Mazatlan, Mexico for just about a month now. And in fact, yeah, I would think 4 weeks. And last night, it was a little thunderstormy, and I was up on the Malecon, which is, I guess, the boardwalk, it's the ocean. And I had this feeling that I belonged here. That I felt that this was the place I'd been searching for. Because I grew up in New York City, and I actually knew at a very young age that I did not belong there. This is not where I belong. But that had to do with my family. How did I get with these people? I know I don't belong here. A lot of us, most people basically stay in or near the place where they were born. I did not have that in me. I really, as a teenager, I used to take long drives with my boyfriend. We would drive up to Connecticut, or we'd drive out to New Jersey, which we were not supposed to be doing, especially not in his father's car that he would steal. And that's the kind of kid I was. And by the 19, I was already living in Greenwich Village with a lot of other kids who had left their conventional lifestyle. And in that time, it was very much like a community. The rich kids had money when they got there, so they were able to rent lofts and things, and they would say, hey, I arrived with nothing. I arrived with nothing. I don't know, maybe I had $5 when I came up out of the subway on 8th Avenue. And, they were shoulder to shoulder, kids my age. And I don't know where I'm going to sleep tonight. Oh, you can come to my place. I have mattresses. Suburban home to go sleep on a mattress somewhere with a bunch of strangers. I survived, and I not only survived, I flourished, and eventually. I'm not going to say it was wonderful, because it wasn't. It was exciting. It was very exciting. And maybe when you grow up, as I grew up, in a very, how can I put it? In a traumatic home, a lot of trauma. Excitement was normal to me. Negative excitement, angry parents, crazy parents, people that did, dangerous things. They did, beatings and screamings and oh my God. So that was one thing I sort of had to heal in myself. That search for excitement. I don't find Mazatlan to be exciting. I find it to be warm. Not only the temperature, because it is summer, but the feeling of it. That was the first thing I noticed. The first time I took the dog for a walk, I went, this air, it felt like it was caressing me. And I am not a fan of 90 degrees heat, which we have the feels like 113 at midday. So I get out very early in the morning. This morning we were out at 6. I'm up at 5:45. I don't know why. I wake up at dawn. And as far as I remember in my adult life, I wake up at first light. Whether I can see it or not, I'm awake. That's kind of a Mother Earth thing, right? I'm vibrating with the earth. It was really nice because we had the rain and the thunderstorms last night. Not so nice with the dog. I said to him, honey, you've survived thunder before. When are you going to learn that it's not bad? It's okay. It's outside. We're in here. Anyway, we got out on the Malecon, and there were a few people on bicycles. Oh my God. Older people. Here's the other thing about where I happen to live. I don't feel like I'm the oldest person here. I probably am, but there's a huge community from Canada, and they're all retired people. So there's a lot of white-haired people there. I, of course, am partially white-haired, but for the first time in about 12 years, I actually did my own hair the other day because I can't find a hairstylist, and also I bought the wrong tint. I'm going to diverge here, like an old lady. And it was sort of blonde, and when I looked at my roots, I went, oh my God, I'm going to be a platinum blonde. But when it dried, it was decent. I still have to go buy the next color up. I don't know why I did. I know I'm a 9. I know that's the color I'm supposed to be using, and I took an 8. There's been a lot of adjustments. My hair is one of them. You will notice it's curly. It's naturally curly hair. But when I moved to Mexico, it was quite affordable to have my hair done every week. It was the equivalent of about $12 to have it washed and blown out and made straight, which you can see in the other. And hair tinting, just the roots was like 500 pesos, between 25 and $30. And if you went the whole head, it was 550 pesos, which, they've changed the rate, and Mexican peso has gotten stronger against the dollar. Guess why? Tariffs. So, where it used to be 20 to 1. Can you imagine getting 20 pesos to $1? And now it's about 16 or 17 to 1. That makes a big difference when you're paying your rent, and your rent is around $1,000 a month. My rent here is more than that. People move to Mexico to save money. But I am living in a full-service boutique hotel. Now, that is part of the reason that I feel I belong here. Look, we all know I'm going to be 86 in, oh my God, I think 2 months. And it is the question we begin to ask ourselves, I think, at retirement. I think the day you no longer have to go to work, you have enough income coming in that you don't have to go to whatever job you have. Now, I have to tell you, I've been a writer all my life. That was my main support. That's how I supported myself. I was a writer. I was a Hollywood writer. A Hollywood hack is really what I was, because they always just hired me to rewrite crap for other people, and it was crap when I rewrote it, but it was a little bit maybe shinier crap. And because of that, I actually get a pension from the Writers Guild of America. It's not a lot of money. Not a lot of money. The average income of a writer in Hollywood is about $35,000. It's probably when I was working, and that was my average income from the 1970s into the 1980s, and I didn't work every year. Of course. Sometimes that 30,000 had to stretch 2 years. Once it had to stretch 10 years. That was a bad time. The 1990s were horrible, and I was stuck in San Diego because I had bought the Dream Machinery. The Dream Machinery is more. The Dream Machinery is more. You have 1 cup, you need 2 cups. You have 2 cups, you need 4 cups. On and on and on until you are on a treadmill of paying for things I didn't need, didn't want. I did not need a 2-bedroom townhouse on the ocean. I didn't need that, but I thought I needed it to impress my Hollywood friends and my agent when they came, because poor people don't get jobs. People who need a job don't get it most of the time. That's an absolute fact of life. And so I bought my clothes at secondhand shops that were like sold high-end designer clothes, because in Hollywood, they recognize the difference between a fake and an authentic. So there's all these things when I have to present myself at a meeting, and those of you who are still working, probably not looking at this, but who did work, you know that's true. So I learned a lot, because I came out of Greenwich Village. I mean, I remember serving, I used to throw parties all the time, because I had, before I got the idea in my head that I had to like pretend I was rich, I had a little cottage behind some people who had also moved from New York to Los Angeles in Brentwood. We were in Brentwood. And it was such a little cottage. It had belonged to a movie star. What was his name? I can't remember. He used to play cowboys. He's famous for playing a drunken cowboy in a movie with Jane Fonda, if you remember who I'm talking about. Remind me. And but it opened up to a pretty large garden. So I would just invite all my unemployed friends and people we wanted to impress and hope would take pity on the New Yorkers who were getting started. But I remember once putting out a loaf of a baguette on the table, and my waspy landlady came out with a basket that was a long, narrow basket, and put the baguette in, and I went, manners. Dressing the table. And I saw her once dress a table for a Christmas party, putting tablecloths on. I went, I gotta learn that, and I did. So I learned a lot of artificial things. And then I just got stuck for 10 years between 1990. Not only was I going through traumatic memory recall, but I was teaching at 5 different universities and community colleges and running workshops to stay alive, to pay these incredible bills because I'd signed up for this stupid thing, a townhouse. I wanted to stay there. In 1990, my overhead for my property, my house, and where I live was $1,800 a month. In 1990, which brings me to today. So I live in a hotel, and my rent at this hotel is approximately, when you convert to pesos to dollars, well, it's around 30,000 pesos, which when it was 20 to 1 would be $1,500 a month. And now it's around it bounces around between $1,600 and $1,700 a month. But here is something that I learned about being old. Because what happened from that experience in the 1990s, in 2000, I was finally able to get out of that property. Remember, in the 1990s, a lot of property was upside down in California. I said, okay, you're never going to live beyond your means again. I'm going to save my money and I'm going to spend. But the thing is, and I did that, and then I moved to Mexico. But the thing is, when I moved to Mexico, I was living below my means for years. In fact, the last place I was in, I bought a manufactured home, I renovated, I painted it bright green, then I hired a muralist to paint giant poppies and other flowers on it. And to tell you that it stood out in this mixed Mexican neighborhood that I had moved to, which had like sort of newer, what I call those white rectangles, boxy things, and then older, sort of more colorful, and a couple of shacks. People were living in a couple of shacks down near the corner. And some of you know who follow me that my little puppy was suddenly killed within seconds. She had escaped, run out of the yard as I was going to the gate to get her back. A car appeared out of nowhere, a speeding car on a Sunday afternoon, and killed her. And of course drove off. And I just fell down in the dirt there, and I didn't want to get up. If you want to know the truth, I just didn't want to get up. And I went into traumatic shock, apparently. I know now, people told me. And, I took her body to the vets, and I did something I'd never done in my life. And I've had other pets, I had her cremated. And I have her ashes with me now in Mazatlan. I might cry a little here. But I'm not telling you because how my grief, and anybody who's ever lost a dog knows what our grief is. It's because I had to make a decision within about a month because I couldn't pull out of the grief. I was crying every single day. Several times a day. I was low functioning. Fortunately, I did have people. I had a housekeeper once a week, and I had a gardener. I had to go get my hair done because even if grief, you had to have my hair done. I knew that grief could kill you. People die. People die from grief. And I had to decide if I wanted to live or not. And I decided I do want to live. I did want to live. And so I began to look for other places in Mexico to live where they didn't have high altitude. Mexico has a lot of places in the mountains. They're beautiful where they're in the mountains. And I saw Mazatlan, but everybody warned me about Mazatlan because it's in the state of Sinaloa, which is famous for being the USA warns you about going to Sinaloa. Stay out of Sinaloa. Because there's cartels here. But, there's mafia in New York. There's organized crime all over the United States. If you ever tried to open a business in New York, a restaurant business, I think you know about it. And if you ever ran a trucking or messenger business, I think you know about it. Or you work at the ports, you know about it, And I'm not in those businesses here. I'm retired. And so I never felt like I belonged in Ensenada, never. I thought it was a nice place, and I was lucky to be there, and I was glad to be there. but I never felt like I belonged. In fact, I had a lot of hints that maybe I didn't. But I was really afraid to go to the mainland. I was afraid my Spanish wasn't good enough. I was just afraid. And then people add to my fear. Oh, you're 80 now, Carol. You can't live alone. Okay, so I moved in with some people who did not treat me well. We were going to open a business. I told you this story before. They got drunk and smoked pot all the time, and I was paying the bills. And I get out of here. And I just made a lot of errors in my quest for safety. There really is no such thing, is there? There really is no such thing. And so despite the warnings and the heat, I knew that, and well, first it was very hot in Ensenada. Heat. Hello, America. You having a little problem over there? France, all over the world. I don't understand why we don't. I don't understand why we don't believe the truth. When we're told the planet is heating up, why don't we believe that? Why don't we go, well, not where I am. Yeah. So, but Mazatlan was already famous for being very hot in the summer. But what Mazatlan has is infrastructure. Everybody has air conditioning. Everybody has air conditioning. And yeah, most people during the summer, you don't see them on the street. Yeah. There's a park across the street from me. And at around 5:30 or 6, you start to see families and children arriving there. And they're there until dark. But it's manageable. I feel that the heat is manageable. So far, it's only July. I think we're in for it in August. I live in a hotel. I have all my services. My breakfast is included with this thing. My Wi-Fi, my electric, my water is included. So when I look at it, it is more than I was paying. But if I average out the cost of the property, which I bought, say over 10 years, I have decided that I am going to live the standard that I can live. And I want to say one thing about what happened with my dog. I am so grateful that I experienced that with this puppy. I had her from when she was about 6 weeks old. If you have a 6 weeks old puppy, you have to feed them 8 times a day. So get up in the middle of the night to feed them until she was 5.5 months old. I had plans for when she was 6 months to start training her because she was a pretty wild, probably part Malinois, a Belgium, oh God, Malinois, and a Labrador. And I am so grateful that I had that experience, that I had her in my life, and she made my life better in Ensenada. In fact, she made it bearable, because when she died, I realized, oh my God, Carol, you have lowered your standard of living. For what? Because you're afraid. Because people keep telling you you're old. And what they really mean is you're going to die soon. Maybe I am, and maybe they are going to be hit by a car and be dead in an instant, like my dog was. So she taught me an important lesson. And the important lesson was not to try and protect yourself all the time, but to live. Because the truth is, my dog died happy. She never knew a day of grief or discomfort in her life, or at least from 6 weeks to when I had her. And when she was hit by a car, she was playing. She'd run out to see the neighbors, whatever, something in the garden. She died happy. And she died painlessly. She was died on impact. She taught me to appreciate life. And she made my life better. And my life is better today because I had that puppy. Because rather than stay there and grieve till I died, I decided to live and take the chance against all warnings that it was dangerous and I shouldn't go there. Come to Mazatlan and find out that this is where I belong in Mexico. Thank you.